Six 7-Eleven locations in the Southland were robbed within 5 hours early Monday morning, leaving 2 dead and 3 injured. Authorities have said the robberies, which all involve shootings, appear to be connected. In related news, Starbucks is closing 6 of its Los Angeles area locations, claiming they are too unsafe to continue to operate. Is crime in our city so out of control that it's too dangerous to operate a convenience store or coffee shop? Joining us now with insight on this and more is retired LAPD Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Sergeant, thank you for joining us. We need your voice on this matter and your expertise. So let's go through it. 6 7-Eleven locations robbed at gunpoint, all within 5 hours, 2 dead, 3 injured. When a pattern becomes that clear, should local authorities have been on watch at 7-Elevens throughout the region?
Well, listen, I mean, it's very hard to do. We're being reactive in this instance rather than proactive. And while this was over a 5-hour period of time, there are hundreds, if not thousands, I would assume, 7-Elevens within Southern California. And so to be everywhere all at once is virtually impossible. But I certainly encourage store owners to harden their locations as best they can. Surveillance cameras on your property could be a deterrent to someone as they approach if they see that there's a surveillance camera mounted on the outside of your building. And so now the hard work that's being done by police agencies across those many locations is behind the scenes. I'm certain that they're looking at surveillance cameras of vehicles that have been identified within that time period that are traversing egress and ingress into those locations to help identify this person. And now we know there's, I think, $100,000 reward. So somebody knows something. We just need them to say something.
I was going to ask you about that reward. 7-Eleven Incorporated now offering that reward, hoping that will lead to a suspect. How often does a reward like that actually lead to information where you can capture somebody?
Well, you know, I don't know the statistics on that, but it's certainly a motivator. And, you know, I hope that folks aren't sitting around, you know, waiting for rewards to come forward. We want the community, and that's why it's so important to have a good relationship with our community partners. We want them to help us solve these kinds of crimes when they happen, whether there's a reward or not. I mean, listen, a couple of someone's lost their life. And so we do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Right. And on the heels of these armed robberies, Starbucks has announced they are closing 6 L.A. locations because they claim they are too unsafe to operate. What do you make of this? I mean, you said that the store owners are going to have to harden their, shops to protect themselves. But should law enforcement be doing more, Sergeant?
Well, there certainly is an onus on the part of both. And I've heard varying stories about why Starbucks is shutting down locations. Some of it is purported to have to do with labor relations and locations that have unionized. And so I don't really know what's behind Starbucks shutting down locations. But listen, I mean, you knew what the area was like when you decided to open up a location. And so to just summarily say, well, this area is a bad area, I'm going to shut it down. I mean, higher security. I know that there's a bottom line component to this, and they're in business to make money, but you also want to create an environment that's safe for your employees. And there are ways to do that if you have an appetite to do that.
I guess that's the new normal for doing business in Los Angeles right now. So the last time we spoke, we discussed whether or not police protocols were followed in the Uvalde, Texas school shooting. And now, a 77-minute video has been released showing the delayed or lack of response by the law enforcement officers in that hallway who did absolutely nothing. They retreated after shots were fired during that critical time frame. Do you foresee criminal liability for these officers? And was this extreme dereliction of duty? What should have happened here?
I certainly believe it was an extreme dereliction of duty, and whether or not there are going to be criminal prosecutions as a result of this will, ultimately be up to the district attorney. I mean, listen, it seems to me like the authorities out there are pretty much all complicit and co-partners, if you will, in this shooting that happened. We have a mayor who it initially was siding with the psychobabble that was coming out of the mouth of the governor, Greg Abbott, about what an amazing job these officers were doing. And now we know that's not true. And then the situation is further exacerbated by that video that went viral of one of the police officers on scene. Sadly, his wife was a victim. She was killed. But we see him on his cell phone texting to his wife, asking for help. An image of the Punisher, which is reminiscent of what's going on here on L.A. County with the sheriffs and officers who are involved in internal gangs, and the Punisher, that skull, that menacing figure, is kind of a logo for those guys. And so I want to know, what is this officer involved in? Was he punishing the community and just happened to get caught when he showed that image on his personal cell phone? So there are a plethora of questions that I have about this Uvalde Police Department and the other 7 agencies that joined in and ultimately did nothing.
I think we'll be hearing a lot more about that in the weeks to come. I want to also ask you about the testimony at this week's January 6 hearing, where we learned how these white militia groups recruit from law enforcement and our U.S. military. Now, we know this is not an isolated incident, that this has become a main artery of recruitment. Sergeant, how do we safeguard our law enforcement from becoming a pipeline to those white, hateful militia groups?
This is nothing new. I mean, the FBI did a report almost a decade ago where they told us this very thing was happening on these 18,000 police departments, where you had white supremacists and KKK who were infiltrating police departments. And so it's not, it shouldn't be a surprise that it goes back and forth both ways. And so what needs to happen is better background, better psychological, continuing and ongoing psychological evaluation, because at some point a person is going to reveal who they are. And when they do, by way of 20+ uses of force or being aggressive in communities where people of color live, we need to believe them and get them off those departments.
Yeah, it's pretty frightening. And before I let you go, I do want to ask you about the Board of Supervisors wanting to have the power to remove Sheriff Alex Villanueva from his position. What do you think about that?
I think they should, and we'll see what happens, because, listen, Alex Villanueva, he's been doubling down for a long time, and we know that there are problems that are within his agency. Like I said, the 17 different internal gangs that are going on. He doesn't want to do an inquisition. He doesn't want to know who they are. I think he may be one. I'd like to see his cap and see if he has a Punisher skull tattooed on him somewhere. So yes, we definitely need oversight. And folks, in the meantime, need to get ready to roll up their sleeves and vote in this upcoming election. You have an opportunity, if you're not happy with the service Alex Villanueva is serving, to do something different.
Never shy to speak truth to power. Sergeant Dorsey, thank you so much for joining us. Retired LAPD Sergeant and author Cheryl Dorsey, we thank you so much. As always, have a great weekend. We'll be right back, everyone.